politics works. It's interesting because the president keeps saying this, that hundreds of thousands of illegals voted, and the mainstream media keeps insisting it didn't just happen, but it did happen. In my own county of Broward, talking to some of the Republican poll workers just this week at a Tea Party event out in Pembroke Pines, they told horrific stories of people voting multiple times, people voting whose names weren't in the rolls, and of course the Broward County officials, all Democrats, looked the other way.
Yeah, every day I write another story that has to do with illegal voting or illegal immigrants coming in and wanting to vote. And I think that we will find soon that Trump was right about the illegal immigrants voting by not just hundreds or thousands, but probably tens of thousands.
I think the most important factor in this election was that the mainstream media monopoly on the dissemination of political information has finally been broken. That due to the technological advances of more people now getting their news on their handheld computer device than watching it on the television in the living room, means that people have to go through the internet to watch their favorite TV shows. Well, once you get to the internet, it doesn't take very long for you to figure out that there's much better stuff on than CNN. More objective, more honest, more unbiased, and so on. And I think this has given rise to a vibrant, robust alternative media. Now our challenge is, of course, that Google and Facebook, so deeply embedded with the Obama administration, are starting to close us down. I saw a precipitous climb in my follows at Stone Cold Truth and Infowars.com, and it continued after the election, and now it's taking a nosedive. And people tell me every day, gee, I tried to go to your email and I got a pop-up that told me it was fake news and no longer available. So Big Brother and censorship is the next big fight. And either the Trump administration will bring an antitrust suit against Google and against Facebook and others, or if I have to, I'll go put together a class action suit because I don't intend to let these multinational high-tech corporations, the tech left as I now call them, I don't intend to let them shut down the internet. And if they insist on doing so, they're going to be inviting not only ultimately legal action, but sadly, I think violence. Americans are not going to stand, now that they've tasted this kind of freedom, they're not going to stand for having it taken away.
So we've been told by the left that it's Russia that caused Trump to win. And we all know how ridiculous that is, but they double down on it every day. Every day they swear that it's, the Russians hacked our election.
Yeah, they have no evidence whatsoever, none, zero. They can't admit that they nominated an old, tired, sick, corrupt candidate, and that there was no enthusiasm for her candidacy. Many of my friends who are Democrats who were for her because they needed to be. They had to be because the Clintons are famously vindictive. But there was no enthusiasm. She almost got beat by an 80-year-old socialist who wasn't even a Democrat a year before he ran. So the whole myth of Donald Trump being in bed with the Russians, I think, pardon the expression, was exploded this week when he launched the attacks on Syria. If he's in bed with Putin, why did he just slam Putin's greatest ally in a statement that I think has implications for the North Koreans, the Iranians, the Chinese? Kind of cool that the president of China was sitting there when the president said, "Oh, Mr. President, by the way, we just launched this attack in Syria." The days of this country being a patsy are over. The days of talking tough and not backing it up with action, I think those days are also over. Donald Trump's his own man. He's the single toughest guy I know. I've known him for almost 40 years. They would really be making an enormous mistake to test him. It's a new day. There's a new sheriff in town.
Well, you lately have been implicated in this Russian scandal yourself, haven't you?
Well, there's been an attempt to implicate me.
Right, exactly.
The allegations, just to sum them up, are that I was in some way in touch with WikiLeaks. By the way, WikiLeaks are also not controlled by the Russians, so if I had been in touch with WikiLeaks, it would be both completely legal and there'd be nothing wrong with it. Unfortunately, it's not the case. The charge is that I knew about John Podesta's email being hacked in advance because I predicted that he would come under public scrutiny. That's conjecture. That's supposition, projection, but it's not proof because it's not true. I never said anything about his email. I was surprised as any American when I read that his emails had been hacked. The other claim is because I accurately predicted, because I had a source, that WikiLeaks had a treasure trove of documents, or I should say information on Hillary, and they would release it in October. Well, they did, and they did. That doesn't prove that I orchestrated it or coordinated it or had advanced knowledge of the scope and content of what they had. So I have been maligned by a number of Democratic congressmen. Now I want my opportunity to testify in public. They disparaged me in public. There's nothing better than waking up in the morning, turning on the TV, and seeing two freshman congressmen kicking your testicles around like a football. So I should have the opportunity to respond in the exact same forum. Members of Congress have congressional immunity for the things they say, but only if they say them on the floor of the House or the Senate. Unfortunately, several of these congressmen said things that they were off the floor, and if I don't get my hearing, I will be forced to sue for an apology at a minimum. I'm not looking for money, but I want Adam Schiff, a congressman I have described as being completely full of Schiff, I would like him to apologize because he has maligned me. Now, I understand that he thinks he's running for the U.S. Senate and maybe thought he was going to step over my body, but he has another thing coming.
Well said. Well said. That's
not the first time I've said it.
No, I'm sure. I'm sure, but I do love that you want to go out in public and refute these charges. I think that everybody should be willing to talk about it.
Well, it's demagoguery. It's red baiting. It's fear mongering.
Yeah.
And it's the worst kind of demagoguery. This guy Adam Schiff is like a small-time Joe McCarthy, and he has no evidence, certainly no evidence that would fit in a court of law. And he is taking 2 and 2 and getting them to equal 6 in his calculations.
And playing with the Russians on top of it.
Yeah,
I mean, that's crazy.
Well, there was no Russian assistance to Donald Trump. And if nothing else, the bombing in Syria proves that Trump is not soft on the Russians.
Right.
But rushing off to a land-based war in Syria? No, I think still think that's a bad idea.
Also.
If the people wanted Jeb Bush, they would have elected him. If they wanted another neocon, they would have elected him. So I am...
This guy right here, he is Russian.
Nice to see you.
Wait, let's look. Say hello.
Are you taking pictures of me?
No, we're videoing. It's a video interview. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyway,
Fans,
yeah,
no doubt.
It's all good.
The Russian with the New York Yankee hat.
Yeah, there we go. So let's talk a little bit about the wiretapping. Were you wiretapped, do you believe?
Without any question.
Yeah.
The New York Times on January 20th, the headline in the print edition is wiretap data used in probe of Trump aides. Now, wiretapping is probably, generally speaking, an outmoded term technologically. It's surveillance. They don't have to put a bug in your house anymore, your office. It's done from a central location.
Right.
But there's only 2 ways that can happen. The government can go to a federal court and they can present a judge with evidence and probable cause as to why you should be monitored. Or the government can go to the super secret FISA court, and they don't require evidence or probable cause, and they can get a judge to order the surveillance. The FISA court approves 99% of the requests put in front of it by the government. They can just surveil you because they want to. But disclosing the existence of that or any of the fruits that come from that surveillance is a felony punishable by 10 years in jail, meaning whoever spoke to the New York Times broke the law multiple times because they said, falsely, that we have emails copies of financial transactions, I should say records of financial transactions, and then on January 30th, they add the transcripts of telephone intercepts. Well, produce them. Let's see them.
Absolutely.
Because they don't exist.
Right.
I mean, on the one hand, you feel terribly violated that the government's been going through your text messages, your emails. So they've seen the emails between my wife and I, my grandchildren and I, my children and I, my business associates
So
and
intrusive.
hundreds
Yeah.
of reporters.
Aw.
But I'll tell you what's not in my email: any contact with the Russians.
There we go.
So, at the end of the day, I may have to sue over the violation of my civil liberties because I think it was done for politically expedient purposes. This was not done because there was some real evidence of collusion with the Russians. That was made up by John Podesta to divert from the fact that he and his brother Tony and Bill and Hillary and their greedy, nasty, foul-mouthed little daughter, Chelsea, who's, got an IQ of 70, that she and her family, they're the ones in bed with the Russians. There's the gas deal, the uranium deal, the bank deal. So the mainstream media is right. There was a U.S. presidential candidate deeply deeply involved with Putin, and because John Podesta never reported the extremely wealthy bank stock that he was given, now Putin had the blackmail ability to deal with Hillary. That's why this is a diversion. This is meant to divert people to look at Donald Trump when they should be looking at the Clintons.
Don't you always find when somebody's doing something wrong, they blame other people for doing exactly what they've been doing?
This is
So
this is a standard tactic of the left, accusing my friend Alex Jones at InfoWars of using bots to spread his links. No, the people who pay for bots are George Soros and David Brock and these criminals. You can see it every day. I hate to go on Twitter in a sense because people are advocating the murder of my wife, the murder of my family, the murder of my dogs. I mean, people make fun of my hair, my clothes, my glasses, the way I talk. I guess it goes with the territory.
Well, it's got to be hard. Just imagine what President Trump goes through every day.
Yeah, I think I may
You
even
do know what he goes through.
I may even have thicker skin than he does,
Oh,
but
yeah.
he's had to put up with this as well. Look, he ran for president not to be somebody, he already was somebody. Not to get a nicer house, he already has a nicer house. Not to get a bigger plane, he already has a bigger plane. I go back to an interview that he gave to Oprah Winfrey almost 20 years ago when he said, to a response to a question, she said, "Donald, do you think you'd ever run for office? Do you think you'd ever run for president?" He said, "No, I don't think so. Unless things get so bad that I have no choice."
Yeah.
Well, that's where we are today.
Yeah, agreed. Let's go back to your book for a second.
Sure.
So, who do you think will be your best audience?
Obviously, Trump supporters who want to have a retrospective view of the entire contest, but also political scientists who want to understand how something cataclysmic like this could have happened. I mean, it's a very lively read. I purposely named the book "The Making of the President 2016," and I tried to copy the style, the format, really, of Theodore H. White's famous book, "The Making of the President 1960." Because that book completely changed the way we cover American presidential politics. And my book is, like his, a combination of big picture trends in the country, combined with kind of down and dirty vignettes from the campaign trail about how it all unfolded. So it's a lively read. You can get it at Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble or StoneColdTruth.com or RogerStone.com or Infowars.com at the store. It's available in all those places.
Well, it's also, I think, a great book for future generations, which is the same kind of thing that I did with my book, is that I want people to understand what we went through. And I think a book like yours would really go a long way towards that. In the next 5-10 years, it will be even more important than it is today.
Well, I hope
because we're fresh.
I
right
hope
now.
you're right. I mean, in a certain sense, any book about an election will become somewhat dated as the administration begins. So I don't know what the shelf life of this book is, which is why you should buy it now. In fact, buy two.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It was so good to talk to
Thank you.
Fascinating interview.
It was
Take
great.
care.